Sandra Bullock was shocked when she caught Keanu Reeves and Ana de Armas together at the movies. The night began like any other, but small choices often lead to the biggest surprises. Sandra Bullock had just finished a long day on set. Her heart was heavy with exhaustion, but she felt a quiet urge to take a break from the noise. She slipped into a cozy sweater, put on a cap to keep herself unnoticed, and decided to visit a small local movie theater. She thought it would be a quiet evening, a place to disappear and rest her mind. What she didn't know was that this decision would place her in the middle of a moment she could never have imagined. As Sandra entered the dimly lit theater lobby, she noticed how different it felt from the grand Hollywood premieres. Here there was no red carpet, no cameras, just families, couples, and friends waiting to escape into a story. She smiled softly, feeling like a part of something ordinary. But her eyes soon froze, and her breath caught quietly in her chest. Just a few feet away, standing near the snack counter, was Keanu Reeves. Keanu was not alone. Beside him stood Ana de Armas, her laughter soft and light as she held a bucket of popcorn. Their closeness seemed natural, almost unspoken, as though they shared a quiet bond that didn't need words. Keanu leaned slightly toward her, his calm presence steady, while Anna's eyes sparkled with warmth. They looked like two people who had found comfort in each other's company. Sandra's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't jealousy in the traditional sense, but a swirl of emotions: confusion, shock, and a pang of disbelief. She had known Keanu for decades. They had worked together, trusted each other, and even carried moments of unspoken connection that stayed in her heart. Seeing him there with someone else, so unexpectedly, felt like stumbling into a secret she wasn't prepared to witness. She turned away quickly, afraid they might notice her. Her mind began racing. Questions filled her thoughts. Were they together? Was this just friendship? Or was she witnessing the start of something deeper? Sandra didn't know, but she felt the weight of it pressing against her chest. The usher called for tickets, breaking the silence of her thoughts. Sandra hesitated, clutching her ticket, torn between leaving quietly or stepping into the same theater where Keanu and Ana were headed. She chose to stay. Her steps were slow, each one heavy as she followed the crowd into the dark hall. Inside, the theater was hushed, the screen glowing faintly as previews played. Sandra found her seat a few rows behind them. From where she sat, she could see Keanu leaning back, his calm profile outlined by the light of the screen. Ana sat close, their shoulders brushing. Though they didn't speak much, their presence together spoke louder than words. As the film began, Sandra tried to focus on the story unfolding on screen, but her mind was tangled in emotions. She remembered the long hours she and Keanu had, spent filming side by side, the quiet support he had always offered her, the way he treated everyone with respect. His kindness had touched her countless times. Now she was forced to see him in a light she had never expected, with someone else in a moment of simple happiness. But as her chest tightened with mixed feelings, another thought rose quietly within her. Wasn't this what she had always admired about him? Keanu never belonged to the noise of fame. He belonged to the quiet corners, to small acts of kindness, to finding joy in simple things like sharing popcorn at a movie. Maybe this was another example of his humility, his choice to live as a person, not as a star. Still, Sandra could not escape the feeling of shock. She had stumbled into a truth that was not meant for her eyes. The glow of the screen flickered across her face, revealing both sadness and admiration at the same time. When the credits began to roll, she stayed seated, watching Keanu and Ana rise together, laughing softly as they made their way out. Her chest ached, but deep down she knew this night would leave her with questions she could not yet answer. Sandra walked out slowly, her footsteps heavy on the carpeted floor. Outside, the cool night air brushed against her face, but her mind was still burning with what she had seen. She had caught a glimpse of Keanu's private world, and it had shaken her in ways she could not explain. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. The night had opened a door to emotions, conflicts, and choices that would soon test not only her heart, but also the strength of her bond with Keanu and Anna. And as she looked back one last time toward the glowing lights of the theater, a whisper of suspense filled the air, because the story was far from over. The silence after the theater, the night after Sandra Bullock saw Keanu Reeves and Ana de Armas together at the theater, she could not sleep. The images played in her mind like a movie she couldn't turn off. She kept seeing Keanu's calm smile, Anna's gentle laughter, and the way they leaned toward each other as if they had known one another forever. The memory cut into her heart in ways she couldn't understand. But what hurt more was the silence. Sandra had always believed that Keanu was an open soul, someone who carried honesty in his actions. Why had he never shared this part of his life with her? Were they not close enough anymore? Or had she misunderstood the depth of their connection all along? That silence grew heavier the next morning when she poured herself a cup of coffee. The warm sunlight spilling across her kitchen didn't ease the ache. She looked at her phone, her thumb hovering over Keanu's name in her contacts. She wanted to call him, to ask directly, but her pride held her back. What would she even say? "I saw you with Anna last night?" It sounded more like jealousy than the truth, that she simply wanted to understand. Instead, she went for a walk. The city felt louder that day, every horn and every voice echoing her inner restlessness. She wore sunglasses to hide her tired eyes, but nothing could hide the storm inside. As she passed a small cafe, she noticed a familiar figure sitting by the window. Her heart skipped again. It was Anna. She sat alone this time, a book open in front of her, and a quiet smile resting on her face. Sandra froze for a moment, debating whether to walk away or step inside. But curiosity pulled her forward. When she entered, the bell above the door chimed softly. Anna looked up, and her eyes widened in surprise before softening with warmth. "Sandra," she said gently, closing her book. "I didn't expect to see you here." Sandra gave a small smile, her voice steady but low. "Neither did I. Mind if I join you?" Anna nodded, motioning to the seat across from her. The air between them was calm, yet filled with unspoken tension. Sandra studied her for a moment. Anna's eyes carried sincerity, and her smile seemed unforced. There was no arrogance, no sharpness, only a quiet grace. "You were at the movies last night," Sandra said finally, her tone careful. Anna nodded, not flinching. "Yes, with Keanu." The name alone made Sandra's chest tighten. She took a slow breath. "Are you two together?" Anna's lips curved into a thoughtful smile, though her eyes revealed layers of emotions. "It's not what people would think. Keanu and I share a bond, yes, but it's built on trust and kindness. Nothing about it is meant to hurt anyone." Sandra looked away, staring at the cafe window where sunlight poured through. Part of her wanted to press further, to demand clarity, but another part whispered that this woman sitting across from her wasn't the enemy. In fact, she carried the same softness that Sandra had always admired in Keanu. "He's important to me," Sandra admitted quietly, her voice trembling just enough to reveal the truth. "I just wasn't ready to see him like that, with someone else. It felt like the ground shifted under me." Anna leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Then maybe this isn't about who he's with. Maybe it's about what he means to you." The words pierced deeper than Sandra expected. She looked into Anna's eyes and found no malice, only honesty. The realization unsettled her. Maybe the conflict wasn't between her and Anna. It was within herself. Before Sandra could respond, a shadow fell over the table. She looked up to see Keanu standing there, his presence quiet but commanding. He carried 2 coffees in his hands, clearly meant for Anna, but his eyes froze when he saw Sandra. For a moment, the cafe seemed to go silent. Keanu's gaze softened, but the weight of the unspoken pressed hard against all three of them. "Sandra," he said in his steady, calm voice. "I didn't know you'd be here." Her heart pounded. This was the moment she had feared yet longed for. All the silence, all the questions, were now standing in front of her in the form of a man she trusted and the truth she wasn't ready to face. Sandra forced a small smile, though her voice wavered. "Neither did I. But maybe it's time we talk." Keanu looked between both women, his calm expression hiding emotions deeper than anyone could read. His silence was not cold. It was thoughtful, almost protective. He set the coffee down, pulled out a chair, and sat with them. The cafe suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in with suspense. 3 lives, 3 hearts, tangled in a web of kindness, respect, and unspoken feelings. And as Sandra's eyes locked with Keanu's, she realized that what came next would change everything. A table of unspoken truths. The air in the cafe was heavy, like the moments before a storm. Sandra sat across from Anna, her hands folded tightly on the table, trying to keep herself calm. Keanu sat down between them, his quiet presence filling the space. He didn't rush to speak. That was always his way. Keanu carried silence like it was a language of its own, and sometimes silence said more than words ever could. But this silence was different. It was loaded. Sandra's heart was racing, and she knew Anna felt it too. Finally, Sandra broke the stillness. "Keanu," she said softly, though her voice trembled. "Why didn't you tell me?" Keanu's eyes met hers. They were steady, kind, and filled with something she couldn't quite name. "Because I wasn't sure what to tell," he answered, gently. "Life isn't always simple. I never wanted to hurt you, Sandra." His words were careful, but they cut through her like a blade. She had expected honesty, yet she wasn't ready for the ache that came with it. "You could have trusted me," she whispered. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but filled with quiet weight. "I do trust you, always. But some things, they're not easy to share, even with someone you care about." Anna watched silently, her eyes lowering as if she didn't want to intrude. But Sandra turned to her, unable to hold back the storm in her chest. "And you?" she asked, her tone sharp but broken. "What are you to him?" Anna took a deep breath, steadying herself. Her words came slowly, but each carried honesty. "I'm someone who found peace in his kindness. He helped me through dark days when I felt alone. There's nothing selfish about what we share. It's built on respect." Those words struck Sandra like a wave. Respect. Wasn't that the very thing she had always admired in Keanu? He never treated anyone with arrogance, never placed himself above others. He lifted people when they were sinking, and now, here was Anna, a woman who had clearly needed that light, and found it in him. Still, Sandra's chest tightened. Her emotions weren't only about Keanu being close to someone else. It was deeper. It was about what she felt, but never admitted. Her thoughts spiraled back to the days of filming Speed, the laughter on set, the way Keanu always looked at her with quiet encouragement, how his calmness had steadied her when the chaos of fame felt unbearable. She had buried those moments under years of friendship, pretending they were just memories, but now they resurfaced with painful clarity. "I just didn't expect to see it," Sandra confessed, her voice breaking. "I didn't expect to feel this way." Keanu's expression softened. He reached across the table, placing his hand over hers, not with passion, but with compassion. "You've always been important to me," he said quietly. That hasn't changed. It never will. Anna looked at them both, her eyes shimmering with something unspoken, an understanding that this connection between Sandra and Keanu was older, deeper, built over years of trust. Instead of interrupting, she lowered her gaze, respecting the moment. But the quiet didn't last. Suddenly, a group of fans recognized them from outside the cafe window. Whispers grew louder, cameras were pulled out, and within moments, flashes began to strike against the glass. The three of them froze. What had been a private, fragile conversation was now threatened by the noise of the world outside. "We should leave," Keanu said firmly, his calm tone hiding urgency. He stood, motioning for them to follow. They slipped out the side door, into an alley washed with golden sunlight. The world outside was loud, but here it was only them again. Sandra's heart pounded as she walked beside Keanu, while Anna followed silently behind. "This isn't just about us anymore," Sandra said, her voice heavy with realization. "People will see. They'll make their own stories." Keanu nodded. "They always do. But we know the truth. And that's what matters." The words lingered in the air, but for Sandra, they sparked something deeper. Truth. She knew she had to face hers, no matter how painful it might be. That night, as Sandra lay in bed, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Keanu. "We need to talk. Just us. Tomorrow." Her heart raced. Tomorrow meant answers, but it also meant facing feelings she had buried for years. The night of truth. The following evening, Sandra Bullock walked slowly toward the quiet restaurant Keanu had chosen. It wasn't one of those glittering Hollywood spots where paparazzi lined the sidewalks. It was hidden, tucked away on a narrow street, the kind of place where silence lived in the corners and secrets felt safe. Yet for Sandra, her heart thundered. With every step, she had barely slept the night before. Her mind replayed every moment. Keanu's steady eyes, Anna's calm honesty, the way the cafe had turned into a storm of flashing cameras. Now, with the invitation to meet him, just us, she felt as if she were walking into the center of her own unspoken storm. When she arrived, Keanu was already waiting. He stood by a corner table, dressed simply in dark clothes, his presence as calm as ever. He smiled faintly when he saw her, but Sandra noticed the heaviness in his eyes, the kind that only came when someone carried truths too long. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. "You asked," she replied, her voice steady but layered with tension. They sat down. The waiter brought water, but neither touched it. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was dense, like the air before. Thunder breaks. Keanu leaned forward, his hands folded. "Sandra, I know what you saw. I know how it must have felt. But I want you to hear this from me." Her chest tightened. She nodded slowly, bracing herself. "Anna and we share something, yes," Keanu said, his tone careful, his words unhurried. "But it's not what people will assume. When she came into my life, she was going through shadows. I've been through shadows too, and I recognize them in her. I couldn't walk away. I chose to be there. Not because of romance, not because of headlines, but because it was the right thing to do." His honesty sank deep. Sandra looked into his eyes and found no lies, only the calm truth that had always defined him. Yet, that truth didn't erase the ache inside her. "You should have told me," she whispered. "We've been through so much together, Keanu. I thought there was nothing we couldn't share." Keanu's face softened. "I didn't tell you because I was afraid. Afraid of hurting you. Afraid of changing what we have." His words cracked something inside her. All those years, the laughter, the long conversations, the quiet moments where his presence had been enough, suddenly felt like pieces of a puzzle she had never fully solved. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Do you know what it felt like?" she asked quietly. Seeing you there with her, so close, so natural. It was like watching something I never realized I wanted until it was gone. Keanu didn't answer right away. His silence wasn't avoidance. It was thought. Finally, he reached across the table, resting his hand gently on hers. Sandra, you've always been a part of me. Nothing changes that. But maybe the hardest truths are the ones we never said out loud. Her breath caught. And what truth is that? Before he could respond, the door of the restaurant opened. Sandra turned, her heart jolting. Anna walked in. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on them. She hesitated, her face unreadable before walking slowly toward their table. The moment cracked with tension. Sandra's pulse quickened. Keanu stood up, his calm composure steady, but even he couldn't hide the strain in his eyes. I didn't expect to see you here, Sandra said, her voice tight. Anna gave a faint smile, though her eyes carried weight. I wasn't planning to, but after yesterday, I couldn't sit in silence. I had to come. The three of them now stood together, bound by threads of respect and unspoken emotions. The room around them seemed to fade. It was only them, caught in a storm no one else could understand. Anna turned to Sandra. I never meant to come between you. I saw something in Keanu that saved me, but I see something between you and him that's different, deeper. I respect that. Sandra froze, her throat tightening. The words cut through her defenses. She wasn't used to kindness coming from someone who could so easily have been seen as her rival. Keanu's voice broke the silence. This isn't about choosing sides. It's about honesty. And honesty means facing the truth we've been avoiding for years. His words sent a shiver down Sandra's spine. Suddenly, she realized what he meant. The truth wasn't about Anna. It wasn't even about the movie theater. It was about the feelings she had buried, the bond they had never spoken of, the possibility that fear had kept locked away. Anna looked at both of them, her eyes soft but steady. Maybe what matters isn't who's standing with Keanu. Maybe it's what's been standing between you two all this time. The weight of her words pressed deep into the air. Sandra's eyes locked with Keanu's, and for the first time, there was no wall between them, only the raw truth of everything they had left unsaid. The world finds out. The quiet corner of the restaurant should have been safe, but nothing in Hollywood stays hidden for long. Outside, a single camera flash shattered the silence. Someone had seen them together. Keanu, Sandra, and Anna, three. Faces the world adored but rarely saw in the same frame. Within minutes, whispers grew louder, and soon the faint buzz of paparazzi echoed like distant thunder. Sandra's heart sank. What had begun as a private meeting was about to be dragged into the light of headlines, rumors, and endless speculation. She looked at Keanu, who remained calm, though his jaw tightened slightly. Anna shifted uneasily, her eyes darting toward the windows where shadows moved closer. We can't stay here, Keanu said firmly, his voice carrying that quiet strength she had always leaned on. He stood, motioning for both of them to follow. They slipped through a side door, emerging into an alley bathed in neon glow. The night air was sharp, filled with city sounds, but the pounding of Sandra's heart drowned them out. They'll twist this, Sandra whispered, her voice breaking. They'll turn it into something none of us meant. Keanu turned to her, his gaze steady. Let them. The truth doesn't need permission. His words should have comforted her, but instead they tore open the fear she carried, the fear of being misunderstood, of having her private feelings turned into public entertainment. Before she could respond, a reporter's voice pierced the night. Keanu, are you in love with Anna, or is it Sandra? The question froze all three of them. Cameras flashed like lightning, and for a moment the alley became a stage. Anna lowered her eyes, refusing to feed the noise. Sandra clenched her fists, her chest aching. But Keanu stood tall, his calm presence unshaken. "I'm not here to answer to noise," he said simply. Then he turned, leading both women into the waiting car of a trusted friend who had seen the commotion. Inside the car, silence pressed hard against them. Sandra stared out the window, her reflection merging with the flashing lights outside. Anna sat quietly, her hands folded, her face unreadable. Keanu finally spoke. "This is exactly why I kept things quiet," he said. "The world doesn't see people. They see stories. But you're both more than a story." Sandra's throat tightened. His words carried truth, but they also reminded her of the feelings she had been avoiding. She turned to him, her voice shaking. "But what about us, Keanu? What about the truth between you and me?" The car slowed to a stop outside Sandra's home. Keanu turned toward her, his eyes filled with something deep, something unspoken but undeniable. "That's the truth I can't keep running from." Sandra's breath caught. For years she had felt the shadow of something more, but neither had dared to say it. Now, with Anna sitting silently beside them, the moment demanded honesty. Anna broke the silence, her voice calm but strong. "Then say it. Say what you've both been afraid to admit. Because until you do, this won't end." The weight of her words sank deep. Sandra felt tears rise, her chest heavy with both fear and longing. She turned to Keanu, her voice barely a whisper. "I can't keep pretending. You've been more to me than a friend for a long time." The air in the car thickened, every second, stretching. Keanu didn't look away. His silence wasn't hesitation, it was a storm of emotions held too long. Finally, he spoke. "I feel the same, Sandra. I always have." The words cracked through the night like thunder. Sandra's heart surged with both relief and pain, because though the truth was finally spoken, the timing felt impossible. Anna sat quietly, absorbing the moment, her eyes glistening. But instead of anger, there was grace in her expression. "Then maybe this was never about me," Anna said softly. "Maybe I was only meant to be a mirror to show you both what you've been hiding from." Sandra turned to her, stunned by the kindness. Anna smiled faintly, though her eyes carried sadness. "I care for Keanu, but I respect love when I see it. And what you two share, it's not something I can stand in the way of." The car filled with silence again, but this time it was different. It wasn't heavy with secrets. It was trembling, with raw, unspoken feelings that could no longer be denied. Sandra wiped a tear from her cheek. "What happens now?" Keanu looked at her, his eyes steady, unshaken. "Now, we stop running. From the truth, from ourselves." Ending line. For the first time, Sandra felt both terrified and alive, because love unspoken had finally found its voice, but the world outside was waiting to tear it apart. The test of love and loyalty the next morning, Sandra woke to the sound of her phone buzzing endlessly. The news had spread like fire. Headlines screamed, "Keanu Reeves caught between Sandra Bullock and Ana de Armas." Tabloids twisted the truth into wild stories. Some said Keanu had betrayed Sandra, others claimed Anna had stolen him away. None of them carried the truth. Sandra sat on the edge of her bed, her heart heavy. This was the fear she had carried all along, that her most private feelings would be turned into a spectacle. She scrolled through message after message, friends, asking questions, strangers speculating. Every word burned deeper, but then her phone lit up with a new message. It was Keanu. "Meet me tonight. We need to face this together." Later that evening, Sandra arrived at a quiet rooftop in downtown Los Angeles, a place Keanu often visited when he needed peace. The city stretched out below, lights flickering like stars fallen to earth. Keanu stood, at the edge, his silhouette steady against the glowing skyline. "You came," he said softly, turning to face her. How could I not? She replied. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The city noise below felt distant, almost unreal, compared to the storm of emotions between them. The world thinks they know us, Sandra said, her voice trembling. But they don't. They don't see the years, the trust, the respect. All they see are stories to sell. Keanu nodded. And we can't change that. But what we can do is decide who we are to each other, no matter what the world says. Sandra's chest ached. And who are we? Keanu stepped closer, his voice low but steady. We are two people who have always carried something unspoken, something built on kindness, on trust, on the quiet moments no one ever saw. I'm done hiding it. His honesty hit her like sunlight breaking through clouds. She felt tears rise, but they weren't only from pain. They were from relief. I was afraid, she admitted, her voice cracking. Afraid that if we said it out loud, it would ruin everything. But not saying it has been tearing me apart. Keanu reached out, gently taking her hand in his. Then let's stop being afraid. The rooftop went quiet again, but this silence was different. It wasn't heavy. It was freeing. Just then, the door behind them opened. Anna stepped onto the rooftop. Sandra's heart jolted, but Anna's expression wasn't one of anger. It was calm, almost serene. I wanted to see you both, Anna said softly, because I know the world is watching. But more importantly, I wanted you to know that I'm not here to compete. I came into Keanu's life when I needed kindness. He gave me that. But what you two share, it's more than kindness. It's history. It's love. Sandra's breath caught. She searched Anna's eyes for resentment, but found only grace. Anna stepped closer, her voice steady. Don't let the world twist this into something ugly. Show them what it really is. Respect, resilience, and love that doesn't break even when tested. Keanu looked at both women, his eyes heavy with emotion. We can't control the noise, but we can control our truth. And the truth is this: we care for each other, we respect each other, and we won't let the world make it less than that. Sandra felt her chest swell with emotion. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. She squeezed Keanu's hand, her tears falling freely now. Together, the three of them stood at the edge of the rooftop, the city lights glowing beneath them. They were not rivals, not enemies, but human beings bound by kindness, respect, and choices that would define them. Sandra leaned against Keanu's shoulder, her voice quiet but firm. Let them write what they want. We know the truth, and the truth is stronger. Keanu smiled faintly, his calm presence wrapping around her like a shield. Anna stood beside them, her face serene, her strength undeniable. In that moment, the noise of the world no longer mattered. What mattered was the bond they had chosen. The courage to be honest, the humility to let go of pride, and the resilience to stand together when the world tried to tear them apart. The rooftop lights flickered against their faces, glowing with the quiet power of truth. Ending line. And so, in the heart of a noisy world, Sandra, Keanu, and Anna chose respect, kindness, and honesty, the kind of truth that no headline could ever take away.